Right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me across the states in Nigeria. Say welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. They say savings are the cornerstone of a stable economy, and of course, ensuring financial security and resilience is important in this part of the world. And I would also want to emphasize that wisely utilizing our funds and resources is paramount for sustainable growth and prosperity of this country, Nigeria. So again, I welcome you to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener, Atanda-Owo. Yes, for those who have been on my matter, when are you going to adopt your husband's dad? I say, calm down. I have an identity too. All right, before I swap you up with my pleasantry, let's hear what on this day in history segment as for. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
On this day in history, July 4th, 2014, delegates at the National Conference in Nigeria voted for rotation of presidency between the North and South and among the 6 geopolitical zones. The delegates, however, shot down a proposal for a single term of 6 years for the president. The principle of rotation, which was also adopted among the senatorial zones in the states, the delegates resolved, should also spread to the local government level.
All right, many thanks for staying with me. I feel the events of on this day in history segment today, it's about the National Conference in Nigeria, which was a significant step towards inclusivity and of course equality or equity in governance. And although the proposal for a single term of 6 years was rejected, but the focus on rationality or will I say rational leadership and extending it to the local government level highlights the desire for fairness or being fair and being balanced on political system across fronts. And of course, in whichever way we want to look at the on this day initial segment, I feel that it is important for us to also practice democracy in everything that we do. And of course, the majority carries the vote on who rules for a maximum of 2 terms, and knowing that this has always been the pattern of our governance in Nigeria. I think that's my takeaway for on this day initial segment. But it's time for a quick message from my sponsor. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. My topic of discussion for today's edition of Real Talk with Kike, is a question mark on the fuel subsidy savings. And of course, the federal government has so far or thus far saved about 400 billion naira, they say, as a result of the removal of the subsidy on petrol since 31st of 2023. And when the initiative was officially implemented, it is of gross lamentation, that over 143 million Nigerians are in extreme poverty, and of course that must be all this must be catered for. People must be catered for because of the biting effect of fuel subsidy. And Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, that SERAP, has addressed a letter to Tinubu, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, dated July 1st, stating that there were concerns about the spending of the 400 billion naira and of course other savings from the removal of subsidy, and making the information public would promote accountability and will reduce the risk of corruption and management of funds. I think this is one of the things that I've always known SERAP for. But on the live show today, I will engage my guest on what the plans, the projection of Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration should be using our fuel subsidy savings for. And before we dive further with my guest via our virtual line, it's important for me to quickly play his profile, and the conversation will continue. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with us. Let me use this opportunity to quickly usher in my guest, Dr. Franklin Ungu. I hope I pronounced her last name properly. Apologies. It's a pleasure, to have you on Real Talk with you. There are many, many thanks for honoring my invite. How are you doing today, sir?
We are trying. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Fantastic. Good afternoon to you. All right, let's just dive straight to the topic at hand, because the withdrawal of fuel subsidy that led to a 150% to 100% surge in fuel costs from 500 naira to 600 naira across the country. We all saw the effect. Nigerians are not feeling the effect of any mentioned palliative from the government till date. Is it safe to justify the removal of the subsidy with the hardship Nigerians are going through right now?
I think it's important to say first that is subsidy good for the economy? Yes, subsidy is very good. It's very important. Every country in the world normally provide a kind of subsidy for the citizens, whether it's in UK or other European countries, in America. But the problem with subsidy in Nigeria, particularly the fuel subsidy, is that the way it's been managed, the way it's been. So many people believe that there's so much corruption, is more or less a fraud. So that's the reason why people are saying that it should be removed. With that argument or with that situation, yes, the subsidy should be removed because it's not being managed the way it's supposed to be managed. The people are not benefiting from it. So it should be removed. But the question then is, how was it removed? Can it be removed in a different way? Can it be better removed? The answer is also yes, because it seems that even though it's been removed, in terms of the plans that are supposed to herald or supposed to precede its removal, I'm not sure it was properly thought out. I'm not sure it was properly examined. So now they are talking about palliative, they're talking about Nigerian Economic Council is supposed to come up with suggestions and all that. I believe that this should have been done because, Nigerians were told that subsidy will be removed since last year. And during the election, they say now it's going to be in June. So there has been an ample time to think through in terms of the best possible, less stressful way to remove subsidy, particularly on poor and vulnerable Nigerians. So I think it should have been better done, just rather than just announcing it and removing it and now saying, okay, let's sit down and discuss about the palliatives. So in answer to your question, should subsidy be removed? It should be removed because of the corruption involved in subsidy management. Can it be better removed? Yes, I think it can be better removed. And I think it should be better thought out.
All right, fantastic. I hear you. But in clear terms, without beating around the bush, should we say that the subsidy was pardon my word, a scam in the first place? Because ex-governor Isa said a week ago on a live television that his friends benefiting from subsidy scams said that they were tired of making money. What's your reaction towards this?
I mean, it's not just about former Governor Isa Yegoda. We've had different people, different publications suggesting that there are a lot of corruption in the subsidy management system. Remember also that there was a committee set up headed by Ike Mokwede that also revealed a lot of, mismanagement with regard to the subsidy situation. So I think it's now becoming, I think it's a public knowledge that the subsidy on petrol is not well managed. There are a lot of corruption. There are a lot of challenges with that regime. So it should be removed because it's not properly managed. If it was properly managed, as I said earlier on, Nigerians deserve to have subsidy because, of course, when you have subsidy, particularly for petrol, it will reduce transport costs, it will reduce living expenses, it will enhance productivity. People can now produce more, export more. We can now have more foreign exchange. We now also employ more people. So it has a cyclic positive effect on the economy. But if it is not achieving the intended benefits of having the subsidy, Then, of course, in economics, we also have what we call reallocation of resources. So it means that if we are not achieving what we want to achieve with the subsidy, it might be better to say, okay, how do we reallocate these resources? Maybe to help us to achieve more productivity, to help us to maybe have more employment, to help us reduce inflation, to help us reduce corruption, to help us reduce insecurity, and all that. So that's the essence of removing the subsidy, and that's the reason why I personally support the subsidy removal, because it's not being properly managed.
All right. Okay, so talking about not being properly managed, I want to touch on something that is sensitive, that people are asking questions. They want accountability toward, because this government, you know, has a legal responsibility to ensure that the savings from the removal of subsidy on petrol are spent solely, judiciously for the benefit of the 137 million poor Nigerians who are bearing the brunt of the removal. So let's assume that the government is working on palliative with the 400 billion naira savings. Should the palliative not come first before the subsidy removal?
That's exactly what I've said, that the way it was announced, it seemed to be rushed. It seemed that it wasn't properly thought through. I believe that the palliative should have been announced immediately before the subsidy removal was announced. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because of course, you know, when prices go up in Nigeria, it hardly comes down. And of course, we've also seen significant negative consequences with the removal of the subsidy. Everything, almost all the price of everything has doubled. And of course, the minimum wage still remains 30,000 naira. If you want to fill a tank of a car now, the least you can spend is 30,000 naira. So you are more or less saying that you are using minimum wage, a month's salary, to fill just one tank. And we've also seen different instances where state governments are now saying, don't worry, you can work 3 days in a week. Private sector is now saying you can work from home. But the question is, what are the consequences of the removal on our productivity, on our job creation, on our revenue generation, on our well-being as a country, and on our growth?
Response right there. So I would like to touch on one of the SANs, the human rights activist, you know, human rights lawyer Femi Falana, that has called on the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to take the bulk of this proposed $10 billion to be saved as a result of subsidy removal, to address challenges arising from it. And I'd like to ask you, should we be addressing the challenges of inflation, like you've said, higher cost of living, starvation, or using the money to stimulate key sectors of the economy? What's your take on this?
No, I believe, I mean, some people have suggested that there should be a cash transfer to poor and vulnerable Nigerians. Some people have also made other suggestions. But I think that the right thing to do, which we are supposed to have done, or which we are supposed to have started, is to look at the different sectors of the economy. So even if we look at the foreign exchange harmonization that we're having now, where Naira is trading at about 700 something Naira, the fundamental thing is, how do we increase the productivity of the economy, of the country? By the time we increase the productivity, some will be exported, and through that export, we can now start earning foreign revenue until and when we can now earn more than we import in terms of our export, we will be in this challenge. So with regards to this subsidy savings, my suggestion would be to look at the different sectors of the economy. And of course, if you look at the different sectors, agriculture is said to contribute close to above 25% to the GDP. It's also the sector that generates over 70% of the jobs, particularly for the poor and vulnerable. Also, last year, agriculture grew maybe about 2%. Manufacturing, another sector, grew about 2-point-something%. So these are two critical sectors that we are supposed to say, what do we do about these sectors? How do we use what we are saying that we're going to save from the subsidy to support this agricultural sector? Because at the end of the day, if you transfer money to vulnerable Nigerians and you transfer 5,000, 10,000, it's not sustainable. For how long will you do it? And we are also saying that we are borrowing money we're getting money from World Bank to do maybe likely these cash transfers. How long will that last? So we are supposed to be focusing on areas that will enable sustainable growth and it has to be inclusive growth. And I think that the critical sector that we are supposed to be looking at is agriculture and manufacturing that will actually absorb this 130-something million Nigeria that we are classified as multidimensionally poor. If we now support agriculture, we can also care what are we going to do to achieve good growth in this sector in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, as the case may be. In manufacturing as well, what are the critical challenges they are facing? Is there any way we can segment manufacturing to say, okay, Northwest, you're going to focus on this, Northeast, you're going to focus on this, North Central, you're going to focus on this, Southeast, South, so that you be sure that at least you are jumpstarting the manufacturing in Nigeria. But at the moment, we are not hearing such discussions. So it's very important that we actually have a better clarification in terms of the economic development agenda of the government. And also, if you remember, the National Economic Council was inaugurated, and they were asked to come about with suggestions on how to address the issue of subsidy removal. My thinking is that the governors should actually come up and say, okay, in my state, this is what I'm going to do regards to employment, which is agriculture again. So I believe that the governors with the federal government can actually come together and look at agricultural sector specifically and say, how can we support this sector to grow double digit, maybe higher single digit in the first 1 year, double digit in the second year, as the case may be. But that's the key source of our sustainable growth and development.
Many thanks again for that elaborate submission. You know, talking about clarity with all that you've shared thus far, I still want to touch on, you know, on these funds, because I like money a lot, you know, especially when it comes to accountability on revenues and all. Because the 3.92 billion or trillion naira allocated for petrol subsidy between January 2020 and of course June 2022, you know, surpasses the combined federal budget for healthcare, education, and of course defense, you know, throughout the 30-month period, you know. So I think 3.36 trillion naira being proposed for the first 6 months of 2023 as well, which I feel that I need your own personal perspective on the key sectors. Should you think that this administration, you know, should pay more attention to in terms of humongous amount of funds that should be allocated to these sectors? What's your advice thus far with your previous submission?
My thinking is that I mentioned agriculture, and you know, when they say that people are multidimensionally poor, you are looking at health, you are looking at education, and you are looking at other standards of living measurements. So my thinking is that in addition to agriculture and manufacturing that I've mentioned, of course, they are all connected. You need to focus on education, you need to focus on health, because once you have people who are educated, insecurity will go down, the productivity will go up, they can actually innovate and think out good ideas that will support the economy. Then another sector is health. Of course, you know, when you have a healthy population, it means that it's going to be productive. So we've looked at key areas, agriculture, manufacturing, health, education, but they are all connected. And of course, you know, we also have the energy sector. How do we now transform the energy sector to support the productive economy? So my suggestion is that I don't really support the idea of transferring money to Nigerians and say, oh, we're going to give you 5,000 this month, next month we'll give you 5,000. I mean, that can be done if we have sustainable revenue sources. Currently we are depending on oil alone, and oil, of course, you know, we're already owing so much money. We're already owing, they said that maybe about something trillion naira that we're already owing. So the idea of borrowing more money to support transferring money to people might not be sustainable, might not be very inclusive. What will be more sustainable is to look at these sectors: agriculture, education, health, manufacturing, possibly energy, that will help us to address this issue of sustainability and inclusivity. But of course, let's not also forget the issue of insecurity that should be properly addressed.
All right, many thanks for that. I think it's important for us to go on a quick break to get a message from my sponsor. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, glad to know you're still right there with us. In case you just tuned into the show, today's conversation is about the subsidy removal savings. I have been on Real Talk with my guest on what the savings should be addressing in the Nigerian economy today, and of course what the current situation and conditions of Nigerians are during this period. And my guest is Dr. Franklin Ugu, Director of LBS Public Sector Initiative. Yes, I hope I'm correct. So quickly, before this conversation will continue, I think it's important for me to quickly open the phone lines. Remember that you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 08098877400, showing on your screen right now. And of course, we're streaming live, on YouTube, and of course on Facebook, both on Silverbell platform and of course on Real Talk with Kike platform. So sir, with all that you've shared thus far, I think it's important for me to ask, because the economy's key sectors suffer due to low earnings, already consumed by inflated subsidy payments. And with all that you've shared thus far, I want to actually, tailor it down to the trade deficit of about $20 million recorded in November 2022 from the low crude oil export received signals, and of course the urgency to jettison petrol subsidy. I must ask you, is the argument to use our subsidy savings for balancing our trade deficit a valid one? What's your take on this? Because this has been a debate on some economic platforms.
No, I think using the subsidy to balance our balance of payments might not really be the argument. As I said, what balance of payments is more or less your receipts in terms of what you receive by trading or relating with the world. So what is more important is how do we increase the productivity and how do we increase the exports opportunity that we have in Nigeria. So, and we should also remember that we have the federal government, we have the state governments, we have the local government. So it's important that when we're looking at this issue of subsidies, this issue of economic development, this issue of employment, this issue of insecurity, that the emphasis should not be only on the federal government. That we should remember that we have 36 states governed by the governors. We have 774 local governments governed by the chairman. So we should be asking them questions with regards, what are their contributions to some of these challenges? What are the solutions that are providing to some of these challenges? Let me just mention something, because we talked about balance of payments. If you look at different states in Nigeria, we are told, using palm oil, for example, that we are still importing palm oil into Nigeria. But interestingly, if a state government decides, okay, we're going to plant 10 million economic trees like palm tree, that 10 million, we give about 15 trillion we give about, give and take, if every state plants it, it gives us about 15 trillion every year in terms of revenue. So if we assume that every state in Nigeria will plant 10 million economic trees, we are looking at about 17 trillion additional revenue to the country. But of course, some of them will go to the states. So what I'm trying to suggest is that in terms of what we're supposed to be using the subsidy to do is not just to say, let's transfer it to our balance to support our trade. What we're supposed to use it to do is to support productivity. So that productivity will increase and will now help us to export more. By the time we export more, we can now receive more foreign exchange that will now enhance our balance of payments. That's the right approach to do. So if we receive the money from subsidy, or if we save, well, let me also step back a little bit. Remember that we are told that we are owing so much, and we are using almost 90% of our revenue to service debt. So the question with this subsidy, though, is while we're not paying subsidy again, is the money really there? or is it that we are not going to borrow more, as the case may be? But if the money is really there in terms of this is now additional revenue that we can now use, we can actually say, okay, let's transfer this in terms of to the critical sectors of our economy that will now jumpstart productive growth, productive economy, that will now help us to now start exporting rather than just importing. As long as we are importing more than we're exporting, we'll be having negative balance of payments. That's the truth of the matter. And of course, oil cannot sustain to help us to achieve a positive balance of payments. So it's important that we look at it and say, okay, what are the other sectors that can support us? The other sector that can support us will be agriculture and manufacturing. I remember attending a conference organized by World Economic Forum in South Africa, and they were asking the question, of course, we have first industrial revolution, we have second, third, we are now in fourth. They were now asking, what level is Nigeria? Some people were saying that Nigeria is more or less still in the first industrial revolution. So we are still more or less looking at maybe just the basic goods. So what we're supposed to do is how do we jumpstart these productive sectors of our economy that will enable us to earn foreign exchange and that will now help us to improve our balance of payments.
Fantastic one right there from you. I want to touch on the fuel prices, especially when it comes to Republic of Benin, that rose from 450 CFA to 800 CFA approximately. And this price, is it safer or, safer rather, and the price difference between that Nigeria and of course Benin Republic is less than that 150 naira, and of course approximately 200 naira per liter for some neighboring West African countries. This difference or the differential status still causes for some arbitrage, if you ask me. And I must ask you, when would this come to an end? What's your take on this, comparing both?
If you buy something in Lagos and you go to Ilorin, there will be a difference because Lagos is believed to be maybe a more commercial center where most of the goods come in. If you buy something from maybe Togo and bring it into Nigeria, there will be difference. So there will always be differentials. So no doubt about it. As long as there is a trade between one state and another state, between one country and another country, there will be differentials. And that's what we call trade. That's where there is people import from China and come and sell in Nigeria and make profit and sell. What is important? What is important is not about looking at these differentials. What is important is how do we ensure that our productivity in Nigeria increases, particularly, for example, in oil and gas. So if we now say that we've removed subsidy, of course, that will now be dependent, the price will now be dependent on demand and supply. The differential between Nigeria and Benin Republic is now based on supply logistics and the cost of logistics and all that. So our focus should be to say, okay, remember we have 4 refineries, they are not working. Interestingly, Dangote refinery is coming on board now, and we also have other modular refineries that are coming on board. As long as the supply and the demand is there, they are making what in economy that they call normal profits, or possibly even abnormal profits. So what then happens in Benin Republic, in Togo, in other African countries is more or less immaterial because it will always happen, because that is part of international trade, that is even part of even local trade. So it doesn't really matter whether they are selling petrol in Cotonou, 800 naira or 700 naira or 900 naira or 1,000 naira, as long as our production, those who are supplying to us, are making their profit based on domestic demand. Once they are making that profit, those that now buy from Nigeria, of course, can now sell in Cotonou, maybe with a margin, can sell in Togo, maybe with a margin, as the case may be. So our focus should not be on what they are selling in Cotonou or what they are selling. The reason why it was thriving before the subsidy removal was because that the gap, the differential was much. Instead that you can buy 100 something naira here and cross the border and sell as the case may be. Remember also that the banking sector, for example, what the banks do is to get deposits from area of surplus and give it to people who are trying to borrow money from the banks, that is, they lend it. Maybe they get loan deposits at 4%, they pay me and you, and they give it to maybe Peter at 10%. The difference between the lending rate and the deposit rate is what we call the profit of the banks. So it's the same thing as trade. As long as we are producing the much we and the demand, the supply is meeting the demand, of course, the other differentials can now be achieved. The people in Cotonou or Togo, and we don't have to bother about them.
For that elaborate insights, I want to touch on Governor Emefiele, that described the Dangote refinery that you mentioned earlier as a game changer. How would the game change by the end of this month when the proposed production starts at Dangote refinery in terms of fuel pump costs and others? What's your take on this?
No, I believe that if Dangote comes on board and start producing, it means that, interestingly, remember that if the petrol that we are using here now, we import. So even if Dangote sells at the global price, what are the costs of logistics, cost of importation, cost of clearing, cost of moving it around, as the case may be? So those external costs, those costs that we incur from getting from outside Nigeria, will be removed. So which is quite significant and quite interesting. So it means that we can now buy from Dangote, or Dangote can now supply to Nigeria, maybe at a global price, and possibly maybe at a discount, as the case may be, given that the NNPC is also part of Dangote, as the case may be. So the reason why they are saying that it's a game changer is that at least we now have a local production capacity that can meet our local demand. So it means that all the things that we're importing from outside, the procedure of going to import, waiting for it to come, waiting for it to be clear, waiting for it to dock, waiting for it to be transported, all that will disappear because Dangote is now in Nigeria, and he will be supplying to us right from Lagos, right from the refinery to different parts of the country. So it's really a game changer, as the case may be. But what is needed again is not to say, okay, Dangote is now producing, the refineries that we have should now not produce again. I believe that the federal government still owes us a duty to ensure that the four refineries that we have start producing, because we can actually export. If they're not going to produce, then it's better that they tell us whether it's going to be sold off, whether it's going to be privatized, as the case may be. And then other local refineries, the motor refineries, should be supported to produce again. Because what they should do is to make the market as competitive as possible. Remember, once you have a competition in the market, the price will start moderating. It will go up, it will come down, but based on efficiency of production, the price will now start coming down. So when you have many people who are producing, it means that we, the buyers, will now have options to say, okay, if you increase your price, we switch our demand from Mr. A to Mr. C to Mr. D, as the case may be. And all the producers will now become efficient, which will now enable us to achieve a lower price. So in truth and indeed, the Dangote coming into stream with about 250 liters, it's really a game changer.
For that elaborate submission. This might be my last question to you on this segment, is because I feel that I need to touch on the World Banks, that warns that an additional 7.1 million Nigerians will be pushed into poverty, especially without measures to compensate for the negative impact of subsidy removal. How do you think that we should reverse these below poverty level figures in the country at the moment?
Interestingly, I think I discussed with some people at high level in different states in Nigeria. So you find out that when we say that 130-something million Nigerians are classified as multidimensionally poor, the question is, where do they live? They live in the 36 states in Nigeria. In Enugu, for example, we are told that close to 60% of the people are classified as poor. In Koto State, over 80%. And that's Ebonyi State, about 70%, or close to 80% as well. So the question is, what should we do about these people who are classified as multidimensionally poor? And what should we do to prevent the additional 7-point-something million people who are coming in? And that's why I keep emphasizing that while we are focusing on what the federal government is doing, we should also focus attention on what the states are doing. Because the poor Nigerians live in different states, in our different villages, in our different local governments. What are the local government doing to address this issue? Because they all have allocations from federal government with their wishes, state will take their own, local government will take their own. So I actually implore and call on the media to also focus attention on state government, on local government, to start interrogating their policies. Where of these newly elected and re-elected governors, we are not yet clear in terms of what they are doing with regards to addressing poverty in their different states. It is now time for us to be asking them for their economic development agendas in terms of how will they create jobs, how will they reduce poverty, how will they reduce insecurity, how will they increase the productivity of their different economies. I believe and I think that if there is a proper collaboration between the federal government, state government, and between the state government and the local government, this issue of poverty in Nigeria should be significantly reduced. But if this emphasis remains with the federal government, sometimes we ignore or we absorb the state government from their responsibilities of addressing the issue of poverty in their different states. As I told you earlier on, if any state in Nigeria focus on agriculture, for instance, the research shows that one economic tree generates over 30,000 naira revenue every year. It means that if you plant 1 million economic trees, in 3 years, you should be generating over 30 billion naira as revenue. So the question then is, what are the state governors doing in their respective states? What are the local governments doing in their respective states? How we then collaborate with the federal government to support agriculture, education, health, and manufacturing to make sure that they absorb as many Nigerians as possible. The reason why many people in Nigeria are poor, and many of them will go into poverty again, is because there's no employment. But by the time you absorb as many people as possible, dependency will reduce, and then more people will now be moved away from poverty. And I think it's possible through a purposeful, sincere, and responsible leadership, particularly in our states and local governments.
Many thanks for all your submission thus far on the live show today. It's been an interesting one with you on Real Talk with Kike. But before I let you go, there's the last segment of the show that I call Trending Stories. These are stories that affect us as Nigerians, that bind us as Nigerians. And the first trending story, that caught my attention is that of the young scholar, falsifying JAMB score. I don't know if my crew behind the cameras can actually pull that up for you. But while they're pulling that up, I really want to, give my submission before I come to you, because take it or leave it, this news is a sad one, reflecting not the misdeed of the young girl alone, if you ask me, but also reflecting on the ills of our society, because the girl didn't just, learn forgery in heaven. Please, can we be real on this platform? Because within our society here, we've taught her what forgery means. She was, I'm sure she must have heard or she must have seen how our government officials, falsifying results and certificates from different institutions, and she puts that into practice, if you ask me. We saw how all of that even, was displayed during this election period. So it's a big shame on us, if you ask me, because a big shame on all of us, so that it will not look as if I'm pointing fingers at only the politicians, especially the parents who are not fulfilling their roles in terms of, trying to raise the children appropriately. Now, let me put that aside. There are no shortcuts to success. I must emphasize on this platform, because it serves as a powerful reminder that integrity and hard work and consistency, are the true keys to achieving our goals. And I've seen that the youth of today, they like to cut corners. I try to keep it real on this platform, guys. Let these incidents be a wake-up call to both students and the public. We must understand that there are no shortcuts or quick fixes on the road to success. We've seen how youth of today are quick to want to drive G-Wagons and wear bone straight hair like me and all of that. Hello, I'm applying myself at my work. I like money and I work hard for it. It is through dedication, perseverance, and ethical conduct that can actually truly make you a positive impact on the society. And that is the reason why the so-called influencers on socials, because the youth of today are so engrossed with the validation of socials. We have to be conscious of what we put out there. So to those who have not been caught, to those, the damages is even more severe than what we are even seeing in our country today. So I want to use this platform to make people understand that unqualified people in managerial roles, in leadership positions, have also added to what is on ground. Because we have seen how people embezzle money. We have seen fraud, unaccountability on daily basis because many cheated their way up. They cheated their way up there. And at the end of the day, nothing to show for it but to continue to cheat and to steal and damage, continuous damaging, and it affects the nation further. So let me rest my breath. The last conclusion for me on this topic at hand is that we are bound to suffer more. I'm a Yoruba girl. Forget that I have Igbo blood in me and Argentina blood. I want to give a Yoruba adage that says that Àti kékeré láti ń pẹ̀kù ìrókò. I hope I said that properly. From Eka Roko, thank you. My directors had to speak that into my ears. But for my non-Yoruba listeners, the child that is trained well today will give us rest and prosperity tomorrow. And I keep emphasizing that the village trains the child, the community trains the children. So if we don't change our ways and focus attention on our kids today, I'm sorry, the future may get worse. I'm just keeping it real. Sir, let me come to you. What's your take on this trending regarding this forceful certification by this young girl?
I think, let me say that while all behavior relating to fraud, relating to forgery, relating to all negative ways of achieving success, while all of them remain condemnable, we should, there's something that they call the concept of path dependence. So I think you alluded to it a little bit as we explain it. So if you have a small child at home and every afternoon or every evening, you are discussing on phone on how to cheat, on how to commit forgery, on how to maybe you are discussing bad things. Of course, the kids will be picking it. But if you're discussing good things, the kids will be picking it as well. So it's on that note that the blame on Nigerian youths might be too much, because the Nigerian youths, as you look at this kid, should be maybe 17 years. I think people normally enter university at 17, 18, as the case may be. I'm not sure that a 17-year-old girl will just sit down one day and start planning to forge a result to become #1 person in JAM. She must have collaborated with some people who are senior to her. So what I'm trying to say is that the youths in Nigeria are hardworking. They are doing what they are very hardworking and are very resilient. And they want a better life and they want a better society. But they're looking up to our leaders. They're looking up to our people that we call our elders. They're looking up to, and they are seeing a lot of ills in the society. They are seeing people now from nowhere. They emerge to become leader, and it's clear to them that this person emerged and became successful through forgery, through fraud, through intimidation, through violence, through all kinds of atrocities. And at the end of the day, the people who now become leaders become your leaders, and they determine what happens to your life. And everybody wants success. So many people are not asking how you became successful. People are not asking, are you successful? Are you not successful? So the blame should be on our leaders, should be on our elders, who even in the face of clear violation of the rules and regulations governing the society, they keep quiet. Where in the face of bad things, they support evil, they support the wrong things. Those are the ones that we should be blaming. As long, immediately you see the leaders and the people behaving well, the youth will definitely follow, the children will definitely follow. Because those who are 10 years today will become 20 years in 10 years' time, and they will become youth, and they will become 30 years in 10 years' time, and they will become 40 years in 10 years' time again, and they will become elders. So we need to start creating that path of sincerity, of nobility, of decency, of accountability from our leaders and from our elders.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
Many thanks again for your own submission on trending today. I think we have another second trending story, which is Olu Jacobs, which Joke Silva said that is no more there. And we saw how all of that trended on socials, where she went on a TV show and she had to spill quite a number of things regarding the condition of her present husband. But before I come to you for my own for your own submission, let me quickly say this, that it's such a trying time for the Olu Jacobs family. Honestly, I just feel it feels very overwhelming, you know, seeing everything on socials. I took time out to go through it, and unimaginable things were being said when the people you love are affected by dementia and can't remember most things that you've shared with them in the past, you know, all the memories that you've created together. So it's even more frustrating, you know, when they can't even remember the loved ones as well. You know, very harrowing period, if you ask me. You know, this is a veteran of a great achievement and compelling contribution to the world of acting and of course the society at large. And we remember him, you know, I remember him in the early 90s when he used to stay in The Third Eye, you know, where he played a detective role in a TV series, you know, fantastic actor of brilliance, I must emphasize, you know. But nonetheless, I just want to say that I'm happy that, you know, Madam Joke Silva is putting up the fight and staying strong for a lover and a husband of decades. The reason why I'm using the word lover, there are many people that are actually married but they are not lovers. That's the truth. We have a lot of people who are just co-tenants, so to speak. So it's great to see some show of companionship, you know, sacrifice, dedication, and complete love, you know, being shown from from her when she was asked about the condition of her husband. And I feel that, you know, she's a role model to quite a number of people behind the cameras and in front of the cameras as well. So anyways, for us all, I just feel that we need to celebrate him while he's still alive. I feel that I like to state it as a real. Nigerians, we are hypocrites sometimes, you know. While the man is still alive, I feel that we need to celebrate him more. Let's reach out to Madam Joke Silva, you know, to support her in terms of strength, you know, and courage. Let's send positive messages of warmth and, of course, comfort to their family. It is indeed a deep words when we ponder about Madam Joke Silva, to say that, you know, your husband, Olu Jacobs, you know, have contributed to nation building, however we look at it. And while he's still here, there's so much support that we can give her, not until the man passes on. And I pray for her and her family. May God continue to uphold them together as they forge ahead during this journey of life. Quickly, what's your take on this training, sir?
I think I agree with you that while we continue to celebrate, admire, and Mr. and Mrs. Olu Jacobs, and we pray that God will continue to strengthen them, strengthen her in terms of the way she's trying to provide. But I think what comes from this is also for us to kind of reflect on what life is all about. And particularly to our leaders, to say that, you know, life is a transition. And the question then is, what will you do with this opportunity, with this license provided to us that we call life? What impact are you leaving on the society? Of course, anywhere you call Olu Jacobs, people will be happy because of what he has contributed to this country. So the question we are supposed to be learning, what we're supposed to be learning from this is how are our leaders using the opportunity given to them to lead this country well, to lead the states well, to lead the firms well, to lead our society well. But at the end of the day, the way we pursue power, the way we use power in Nigeria leaves a lot to be desired. But at the end of the day, we find we are supposed to appreciate that life is just a transitory period. And when it's given to us, we should use it for positive impact on the society because our days are numbered. And even when they are numbered, the active days are even shorter than the total number of days that we're going to live on this life. So that's my final take on this.
Many thanks. Just to add to what you've just said, the legacy you are going to leave behind is something we must always remember every day of our lives while we're on the air. On this note, this is where I draw the curtains of the show. Till I come your way next week, I take that back. Till I come your way on Thursday, remember to catch me live on Inspiration FM 92.3 tomorrow. But many thanks to my resourceful guests, for all that you've shared thus far, and I wish you the very best as you continue to journey through your career and in your personal life. Thank you so much for doing this with me, and on this note, this is where I say bye now.